Chapter 6. The Temple of Courage. Turaga Whenua shuffled across the wide stone bridge that stretched over the lake of fire leading to the walled fortress of Takua. The rising smoke from the nearby Mangai volcano hovered across the sky, shrouding the midday sunlight, delegating the illumination to the red-orange glow of the surrounding lava. From savage terrain to bitter cold wind, the profound heat of Tawahi was just one of many extremes he experienced on his strenuous journey from Onuahi. For he had walked for more than 12 hours, stopping only to defend himself against an occasional curious or hungry Rahi beast along the way. He had grown weary, and his body sent every signal it could manage to his brain, urging him to stop and rest, but he refused to heed them. His mind was locked onto reaching his destination. The soreness of his muscles could never compare to the pain he felt in his heart. Within such a short time, he had lost everything in circumstances beyond his control. All he could do now was assist the others with his gift of knowledge, so that they could have but a chance at preventing the same fate. Little else mattered. He came upon the black stone walls of Takua, which had only become more fortified since his last visit. After the Battle of Kini Nui, the Tamatoran gladly accepted the task of clearing the sacred temple of the undamaged war machines, transporting them to their village to increase their already thorough defenses. Catapults, ballistae, and other war contraptions were installed along the walls. Despite their brief period of peace on the island, the guards that patrolled the gate were no less armored and orderly than they had been in the last century. Militant discipline ran deep in the veins of many Tamatoran, though it was also likely Captain Jalla had caught wind of the new threat facing the island and ordered stronger security.
Turaga Whenua approaches,
called one of the patrolling guards, followed by the ceremonial blast of a horn.
Raise the gate!
The two guards stationed outside stood at attention as the iron gate slowly raised open. Turaga Whenua gave a nod of acknowledgement to the guards as he stepped through the archway into the village, where the constant booming rumble of the flowing lava was replaced by the commotion of training guards and buzzing civilians. It had always been clear to anyone visiting Takua that its residents saw little value in expressive aesthetics or flashy decorations like some of the other villages. Everything from the buildings to the streets had been designed for practicality. Most of the structures were built from black lava rock and iron. The most prominent form of visual expression came in the form of flags and banners displayed across the village beside shops and businesses. Whenua had barely walked more than a full block down the main street when he could see Turaga Vakama approaching from the opposite direction. Walking by his side was Captain Jalla. Whenua stopped in the middle of the road, halting the involuntary rhythm he had acquired over the course of his long passage from Onukoro.
Whenua, my dear friend,
Vakama said, extending an open hand toward the other Turaga.
We weren't expecting you so early.
Are all the Toa here?
Whenua asked as he accepted the greeting.
Yes, save for Toa Lua.
He'll have to be brought up to speed later,
Whenua replied as he leaned against his staff to give his aching joints some much-needed rest.
Gather the others. I have much to share.
Well, surely you must be tired. We can arrange the meeting once you've had rest.
There's no time for rest. Onukoru has fallen.
Both Vakama and Captain Jalla's eyes widened at the news.
I am sorry, Whenua. The meeting will be held at the Temple of Courage. I will gather the Toa right away.
This meeting is to be documented, correct? Jalla asked.
Yes, Captain.
Vakama replied before he and Jalla made off in opposite directions, while Turaga Whenua headed for the Temple of Courage, which was located near the center of the village. Takua was alerted by a sudden knock on his door, accompanied by a rough tickle against his fingers. His eyes cracked open to see the beady eye stalks of Pewku staring down at him, as she licked his hand that had draped over the edge of the compact stone slab that served as both a dining table and a bed in his modest one-room house. The typical living situation for most Tamatoran. He gently pushed the Ussel crab back before rolling onto his back. His eyes began to close again before the knock was heard a second time.
Come in,
Takua said after sitting up and rubbing the lingering sleep from his eyes. The door immediately swung open, revealing the sobering presence of Captain Jalla standing at the doorway.
Captain?
Takua said, springing to his feet. Were you sleeping? It's the middle of the day.
I had a late night. I'm not late, am I?
No. Turaga Whenua is early. He traveled through the night to get here. We're starting now.
Of course, Captain.
Takua said as he walked over toward a barrel beside the pile of unwashed dishes on the top of his kitchen counter. He opened the lid and pulled out a black fist-sized fruit and tossed it toward Pewku. She swiped it from the air and burst it open under her claw, immediately lapping up the dark purple juice that spilled onto the floor before moving on to the rind. Takua hurried out the door, forgetting to grab his supply bag containing the Book of Chronicles from his desk. Jalla swiped it before closing the door behind them and handed it to Takua. He accepted it with an embarrassed smile before slinging it over his shoulders. All his life, Takua had viewed the captain as a larger-than-life hero. And although their recent adventures together had allowed Takua to become slightly more comfortable in his presence, he still viewed him as someone with unattainable esteem. Pewku seems to be settling in well, Jalla said as they headed toward the Temple of Courage.
Yeah, she's good company.
It's good to know Captain Onipu made the right choice. I've fought beside her a few times when she was his main Ussel. She's a fierce beast.
It's hard to imagine. She's so gentle to me.
That's not surprising when you spoil her with Vuata maca fruits. A barrel full of those can't be cheap.
They were a gift from Vohan and the other traders after the battle. I've never had much of a taste for them, but Pewku loves them.
It seems like you've been getting a lot of gifts lately.
I know. I'm grateful, but I have to admit, it's a weird feeling.
I'm sure it will die down after a while.
That's fine by me. I'm just glad I'm finally starting to find my place in the world.
And yet you still feel the need to wander.
That's never going to change. I just like to explore.
There's nothing wrong with that, I suppose. Just be careful. Just because the Rahi aren't actively hunting us anymore doesn't mean they aren't still dangerous. Anui Rama's claws are just as sharp as they were a month ago.
Don't worry, Captain. I know my limits. Besides, I have Pewku to protect me now.
So where'd you wander off to last night that made you sleep half the day away? Takua was hesitant to respond, until he noticed Jalla's expression become stern.
I was looking for another way into the caves under the village.
Takua, those caves are closed off for a reason. It's not safe.
I know. I can't explain why, but I've always had an itch to see what's down there. And now that I've seen the rest of the island, it's just gotten stronger.
There's nothing down there but lava vents. One wrong turn and you'll be cooked alive.
I'm a Tamatoran. I know my way around lava.
You don't exactly have the greatest reputation with lava either.
Yeah, okay. But I still want to see for myself.
Look, I know being a chronicler involves taking risks. Just don't be reckless. The Turaga and I often wonder if you know the difference.
Come to think of it, I'm not sure if I do.
That doesn't surprise me. But we have too much on our plate to be your chaperone.
Things got drastically better on the island when the Turaga set me loose.
I guess I can't deny that. Come on, they're probably waiting on us. Jalla and Takua climbed the short steps leading to the entrance of the Temple of Courage, which was carved into the mouth of a maskless Matoran face. Every village on the island derived a key principle from one of the three virtues, with the Tamatoran obtaining the principle of courage from the virtue of duty, resulting in some of the most bold and selfless Matoran on the island. They credited the success of the Takoro Guard to this principle. The temple was constructed within the first decade of the island's history, and remains the largest structure in Takoro, providing Ta Matoran with a place of meditation and study, and on rare occasions such as this day, served as a conference hall for affairs the Turaga deemed to be greatly important.
Is this everyone?
Turaga Whenua asked as Captain Jalla seated himself at the long rectangular table beside Turaga Vakama, while Takua found a spot in the corner of the room to get an equal view of all in attendance. On the opposite side of Turaga Vakama was Kapura, the left hand of the Turaga of Takoro, who hardly spoke a single word during the full duration of the meeting. 5 of the 6 Toa occupied the remaining space at the table, seated on makeshift stone slabs to accommodate their large size, prepared by Toa Pohatu that morning, while the 6th slab was glaringly vacant.
Liwa is still absent,
Toa Onua replied.
We can't afford to wait any longer. We'll have to carry on without him.
If these creatures are such a threat to the island, then we'll need our full strength to stop them,
said Toa Gali.
He was aware of the meeting, wasn't he? Surely we can spare a few moments before we begin.
We cannot. Onukoru has been destroyed. I fear the other villages will soon follow.
The room was struck with a dead silence at the Turaga's report. Widened eyes glanced around toward one another before Onua finally spoke.
When did this happen?
Late last night. It was all swept away in a flood. I came straight here once we had evacuated. I didn't even spare the time to explain where I was headed. I can only hope they don't believe I abandoned them.
What about the villagers? Did everyone make it out?
Whenua hung his head in shame.
All but 3.
Jalla hesitated to respond. That's why you traveled here alone, isn't it? You've never traveled this far without Captain Onipu's company. Whenua stared at the captain before giving a sorrowful nod. Jalla pounded his fist against the table. I was afraid of that when you first told us.
Who else?
Vakama asked.
Both my right and left hands stayed behind to ensure the rest of the village escaped, which they succeeded aside from Nuparu, our most gifted engineer. Their actions were selfless.
Tahu!
Takua softly gasped. Whenua turned back toward the chronicler.
I am sorry, Takua.
Takua stepped back against the wall and slumped down to the floor. The Book of Chronicles slipped from his hand as he tried to process the news. Turaga Whenua turned back to those at the table and sighed.
I only wish I could have taken their place.
So then,
Toa Tahu said.
tell us about these Bohrok.
Vile creatures. Even according to the knowledge I sought, their existence and purpose is shrouded in mystery, though I was able to learn enough to potentially aid your mission.
Where did this knowledge come from?
Pohatu asked. Whenua paused.
My position as Turaga has granted me understanding regarding many matters of the world that are otherwise forbidden.
Tahu scoffed.
And just how do you decide what gets shared with the rest of us lowly boneheads?
By whether that knowledge affects the well-being of the island.
Vakama replied irritably.
Much like Matoran races, there are 6 breeds of Bohrok, each possessing unique traits and abilities, and all of these abilities resemble twisted mockeries of our own, revolving solely around destruction. The Nuvok were the first to reveal themselves in Onukoro. They are characterized by their black armor, They are the moles, creating shallow tunnels to weaken foundations above.
I've seen what they're capable of. It's not pleasant.
You may be surprised to learn that they are the least intelligent. The same cannot be said about the Galak, the ones responsible for the loss of our home. They will create and redirect floodwaters to flush out their targeted areas. Fortunately for the rest of you, I believe they have already demonstrated the full extent of their destructive potential, as all other villages stand on higher ground. But that does not mean they are to be underestimated. They are clever and highly adaptable. Eliminate them quickly. After that, we have the Bohrok. They are slow and among the least aggressive. Use this to your advantage, but do so with the utmost caution, for their hands can generate seismic vibrations capable of turning rocks and mountains into dust. I imagine the result will be no different, should one land a blow on you.
Attack from a distance,
said Kopaka.
Got it.
Turaga Whenua nodded at the Toa of Ice's suggestion before continuing.
When not sawing through metal or stone, the Bohrok with their icy blasts will freeze over the lake of fire if given the chance.
If being the key word, Jalla commented as his hand rested over the handle of his sheathed sword.
Those are the ones Kopaka and I had a run-in with yesterday. Best if you don't let them corner you. That ice is no joke.
Next are the Tanakh. While the Bohrok are generally more concerned with destroying the environment rather than fighting, the Tanakh are the easiest to provoke. They are also the fastest, and their shields can produce enough heat to incinerate nearly any substance.
And those are the ones Kopaka fought before I found him, right?
And do you have any suggestions on strategy, Toa Kopaka?
He's right. They were aggressive and quick to attack,
Kopaka said, glancing over toward Tahu.
making them reckless, sloppy. Nothing I hadn't encountered before.
Finally, we have the Levak. They are a peculiar addition, being the only breed to not correspond to a Matoan element, using streams of acid to break down their targets instead.
Pohatu and I battled a swarm of them outside the gates of Pokoro. They were much more difficult than the Nuvak.
Huh, that reminds me. One of our Matoran was hit with a stream of their acid, but he wasn't hurt. And this was after watching them melt through 10-ton statues and iron tools with no trouble. I was hoping you had an explanation for that.
The gathered Toa noticed the Earth Turaga's expression flashed a display of surprise at Pohatu's report. He paused for a moment before presenting an answer.
Levak acid has been observed to be ineffective against protodermis, which is the primary component in our physical forms.
Observed by whom? Where are you getting this information?
Please, Tahu. Stay focused.
I am focused. I'm focused on the fact that you Turaga won't tell us anything, but you expect us to all just play along.
Turaga Whenua traveled all the way from Anukoro to present you invaluable guidance on saving this island. And yet you claim we tell you nothing?
I've had enough of this. What are you hiding?
Watch it, Toa. You may have earned my respect when you freed the Rahi, but that doesn't put you above the Turaga. Show some respect.
Tell me, Captain, how do the soles of their feet taste to you?
Tahu, can we not have a single gathering without your puffing your chest at everyone?
Tahu paused to find everyone present staring at him with looks of disapproval. He rolled his eyes as he relaxed his shoulders with a dismissive wave of his hand.
My apologies, Turaga. Carry on.
Turaga Whenua shook his head in exasperation before he continued.
Each Bohrok carries within it a Krana, their greatest strength, but also their greatest weakness.
The Kanohi brains,
said Pohatu.
Yes. The Bohrok are not living beings, but are vessels for the Kana to control. If the Kana is removed, the Bohrok falls dormant until it can be replaced. As Toa Pohatu stated, they share similarities with the Kanohi masks, even granting Bohrok powers based on their type.
What sort of powers are we talking about?
There are 8 types of Kana, but only 3 of the powers are known: strength, shielding, and flight.
We've seen shielding.
Strength, too.
The remaining 5 are believed to enhance the Bohrok's senses or mental performance. These will be more difficult to immediately identify.
That explains why some act far more intelligent than others.
Perhaps. Be mindful of the Kana, for they are the true minds of the Bohrok. Even removed from their bodies, they can think and act on their own. They cannot survive long without their vessels, so they will immediately begin searching for another host. Destroy them whenever the chance arises.
So how are we supposed to stop them? Where are they coming from?
Whenua sighed.
They come from beneath the island, but beyond that, I do not know. We are unaware of any portal they may be using to reach the surface. I fear my knowledge has been exhausted.
So what now?
Learn what you can from every encounter. Report your findings to each other, the Turaga, and the village guards. Until we can find a way to attack the source of the problem, we are simply buying ourselves time.
Thank you, Turaga Whenua.
Vakama said before standing to address the table.
Although we still know little of how or why these creatures are plaguing our island, we can apply the knowledge that we've been equipped with to aid in our pursuit. Now, I suggest that you all return to your villages and inform the other Turaga so that they may contribute to planning stronger defenses.
So, what's the plan, Captain?
Tahu asked. We'll double our patrols along the break. Add extra scouts around the wall. We'll need anyone that's not recovering from their wounds at Kininui on duty. I hope you're planning on sticking around. We could use your help. Tahu nodded as he rose from his seat.
I'm ready.
Good, Jalla replied as he also stood before turning to the other Toa. Great Spirit guide you all. Come on, Kapura. We have preparations to make. Yes, Captain. Kapura replied in a tone devoid of any emotion, speaking for the first time since the start of the meeting. He rose and followed the captain, moving with an unusually precise and deliberate stride. Tahu followed shortly after, ducking through the doorway of the temple.
Now that we're done here,
Turaga Whenua said, already hobbling toward the exit.
I must return to Onuwahi.
Wait, Whenua.
Vakama said, holding his fire staff out to block the Earth Turaga's path.
You are not fit to keep traveling. You need to rest here.
I can't stay here. The Onu Matoran need me.
Which is precisely why you must rest. Your strength is spent. If you went out there now, you would never make it back to them. They can't afford to lose you as well.
He's right, Turaga. You aren't well.
Whenua looked around to see everyone present staring at him with expressions of concern.
I suppose you're right.
I would like to join you on your journey back, Turaga, if it's all right with you. Tepu was my friend, and I wish to pay my respects. Plus, I could collect a few accounts from the survivors. Hopefully, we can learn something.
A good companion shortens the path.
Yes, Takua. You may accompany me. We leave at first light tomorrow.
Vakama pulled his staff away to allow Whenua to pass. Takua headed out behind him and Vakama followed soon after. Kopaka was the next to depart, leaving only 3 Toa remaining in the room. Onua sat forward, absent-mindedly tapping his claws against the table.
Onua?
Gali said as she reached out to take hold of his oversized hand.
I am so sorry.
It's a lot to take in. I wish I could have been there.
We're here for you, brother. You know where to find us.
Thank you, both of you. But speaking of brothers, Lewa's absence is concerning.
I was thinking the same thing.
You should return to your villages, as Turaga Vakama requested.
Onua said, rising to his feet.
I'm going to Lee Koro.